I am, Hi everybody, my name is Almas. I'm a principal TME, part of the CDSS. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what we have learned so far from Imran, that the threat these days are becoming highly sophisticated, correct? These days we're not only seeing a high volume of known threats, which can be protected through the traditional network security solution by using their signature or databases, but we're also seeing a huge increase of unknown threats, correct? Those threats are highly evasive in nature. So in today's demo, we'll see how these modern day attack looks like it during the different stages of an attack lifecycle. We were also going to talk about different tools and techniques attackers are using to make these threats invisible to the traditional network security solution. And we will also, of course, going to talk about how our advanced security services can still help protect our customers from these highly sophisticated and invasive threats. So with this, what I have tried to do here is I have tried to map the modern day attack lifecycle with the MITRE frameworks, correct? For two main reasons. First, to give you an idea how these attacks looks like it at different stages, correct? So you can see how a modern day attack looks like it. And then also to show you how our different advanced security services can help at different stages of attack lifecycle. So just a quick overview of these different stages. I'm going to talk about it during the demo. So usually what we have seen is the modern attack start from a reconnaissance stage, correct? That's the stage where the attackers hasn't launched the attack yet, but is gathering the information for the target organization is employed by using different social engineering tactics, correct? Once that step is done and has enough information, is ready to launch its attack, it goes to the second stage, which is initial access. During the initial access, now attacker is trying to get into an entry point into your network. That could be through a phishing, correct? Campaigns, because they send you some emails through a URL, some phishing URLs asking you to go to their site. Could be because they have discovered that you have a vulnerable server in your network, maybe on the DMZ zone or something, correct? That's their initial access point. Once that is done, that's a put into your network. Once that is done, they usually go for the stage 3, where they're trying to download the malware and execute that malware, correct? This is the point where they will be able to compromise that initial access point machine, correct? Could be user machine or server. And once that is done, then basically they go on to the stage 4, where basically now since the machine is compromised anyway, it's going to build this command and control channel to the server, and then basically to get additional tool and instruction is needed to carry on the attack, correct? Once that is done, now with this additional tool and instruction, now attacker will map out your network. What it's looking for is lateral movement, correct? It's trying to look for that vulnerable server with a higher privilege, correct? Because once it has it, it will be able to gather the sensitive information. And that's the whole goal, right? It's looking for the sensitive information. Of course, once it's able to gather the sensitive information, and it has a persistent connection at this point, all the way still with the command and control server, is going to act on its final goal, which is data exfiltration, and is going to try to exfiltrate the data out. So this is how usually a typical modern day attack lifecycle looks like it, correct? So, with this, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to do the live demo. I'm going to do the demo. But one thing I would like to mention during the demo, most of security services part of this demo are set in alert mode. Of course, for me to facilitate the demo and not disturb the attack lifecycle, correct? So if you don't see the block page, don't worry, we're still detecting it. So with this, let's start. So here you can see, correct, this victim machine has been targeted by an attacker by sending him a phishing email and asking that user to go to this malicious website, correct? Now, if you log into the user machine, you can see this user has received a phishing email pretending to be coming from his IT department with an urgent request to update the advanced safety scanner. Of course, the request looks, so you can see the attacker has put extra effort and it looks extremely realistic. So of course, me as a user, I'm going to click on this link thinking I'm going to this page where I'm going to have an advanced safety scanner. But here you can see, once I click on this link, I landed on this CAPTCHA challenge. So this is an evasion technique this attacker is using, because instead of me landing on the real malicious page, I landed on this captcha challenge. What is the idea? Idea is with this evasion technique, now security vendor web crawlers, when they're going to go to the site, they will not going to be able to see the real malicious web page, correct? Which is hide right behind this captcha challenge. And of course, we'll never be able to add this URL in the databases as a malicious. So database approach really doesn't work here. So now, of course, me as a user, I'm going to go ahead and solve this captcha challenge. And once I solve the captcha challenge, I'm going to land on this malicious page running malicious JavaScript. So you can see how easily a sophisticated attacker can evade the database approach of URL filtering solution by simply using these different evasion techniques. Now, if you look at our URL filtering log, you can see we're still able to detect this URL or this page as malicious, just because we have analyzed the threats in real time with our advanced deep learning modules. But let's continue the attack lifecycle, correct? Let's go back to the user machine. Let's assume the advanced URL filtering was not enabled or does not align, correct? So what happened in this case, of course, now me as a user have no idea about this attack at all. I'm going to click on this link thinking, I'm downloading the advanced safety scanner. This is where our advanced wildfires can help and mitigate the attack. Correct. So let's take a look on the log. Correct. So here you can see our advanced wildfire has detected this file being malicious. And I'm going to talk a little bit. So now at this point, I'm going to take a break from this demo. I'm going to go back and explain you the evasion technique used by malware and why the advanced wildfire was needed and how advanced wildfire, in other words, was able to detect this highly malicious and evasive malware. Correct. So let's take a look. Hold on one second. Okay, so let's take a look, correct? So let's see how we were able to Let's first take a look what happened when the regular wildfire have analyzed this file and why it wasn't able to detect this file being malicious, correct? So as a regular wildfire analysis, correct, we have multiple steps we do while we're analyzing a sample. The first step is a static analysis. During the static analysis, you can see it did find some suspicious characteristic, but wasn't able to detect as a concrete to mark this file being malicious. For example, we have seen the file has some section of size discrepancy. We have seen some high entropy into it, like, for example, the randomness in the file, but nothing for us to mark this file being malicious. So of course, what it's going to do is it's going to ask for dynamic analysis. Now the wildfire is going to analyze this file through the dynamic process. And you can see even that process wasn't able to detect anything being malicious. We have seen, again, several low severity behavior, like long ideal time between when the file was getting executed with different behavior, correct? We have seen some processes getting started and stopped. We see those more common with the malicious sample. But there was no fingerprint created. We weren't able to observe that what was happening when the system process was starting and stop, because sometimes the regular process file will do that too, right? So the problem with the security vendors is like you cannot, unless you have a very good concrete answer, you cannot mark a file being malicious, because then it could create a false positive, correct? So nothing was analyzed. Now let's see the same sample when it get analyzed by the wildfire, what happened. So during the advanced wildfire analysis, we have observed that this particular malware was programmed to evade detection, correct? It's programmed to evade detection from a sandboxing solution. It basically, what malware did, it injected itself into the code in memory. And because of that, it was able to hide itself and not able to create any fingerprinting mechanism at all. What we have seen is basically the sample leverage process called hollowing and injection, basically, which pretty much means it was changing the code in the memory and went through a number of obfuscation techniques to hide himself and not getting observed by the process itself, correct, and create any fingerprinting. But with advanced wildfire, since we are doing an intelligent runtime memory analysis called IRMA, basically where we're taking a different snapshot, as Imran has explained you during the presentation, what we're doing is we're monitoring, instead of monitoring the process while the file is getting executed from the guest operating system, we're monitoring it at the hypervisor level, correct? So which means we're taking its different snapshots, and between the snapshots, we can see that malware was trying to do different process, different memory was changing, correct, while we were taking the snapshots. And we were able to detect this, basically all these different malicious activities this malware was trying to do. For example, it was trying to inject the payload into the memory. It was trying to elevate the permission to run different processes. Lots of things was observed, and that's how we marked the file being malicious. So with this, let's go back to our demo, correct? Let's continue our attack lifecycle. Let's go back to the user machine. Let's assume even the advanced wildfire was not in line, right? We weren't able to detect, block this file. So what's going to happen is, as a next step, of course, me as a user have no idea this file being malicious. I'm going to go ahead and try to execute this file, thinking I'm upgrading the advanced safety scanner. So what would happen is, with the file execution, now this malware is going to compromise my user machine. And it will try to, and will open a backdoor channel to the command and control server. At this point, what the attacker is doing is trying to push more tool and instruction to this compromised machine to carry on this attack. And this is where our advanced threat prevention can help and mitigate this attack. So if you look at here, correct? First, look at the traffic log. You can see this traffic, this command and control traffic is coming up as a Microsoft team. Correct? It's strange, a perfectly normal and legitimate business traffic. And the reason is because the sophisticated attacker, he knows that most of the businesses will have some kind of signature-based threat prevention system. So instead of using a commodity malware, is using a basically sophisticated beacon malware with malleable profile, which is programmed to create this realistic traffic, correct? Or mimic the real world traffic like Microsoft Team in our case. So this is how these evasion techniques are hiding itself. And there are tons of red team tools like Cobalt strikes are available, which can make any adversary to mimic the real world traffic. Now, if you look at the thread log, you can see our advanced threat prevention was still able to detect this traffic, even though we're mimicking to be a real world traffic like Microsoft Teams, still able to detect it because we have analyzed this request in real time and not dependent on the signature only. So with this, I think basically our inline detection part of this was released part of the Nebula release, where we basically added the detection of the command and control and protection against this. But let's continue our attack lifecycle. Let's assume the advanced threat prevention wasn't in line, and then attacker was able to push his tool and instruction to the compromised machine. And now attacker is ready to map out my network. What it's looking for is that vulnerable server with highest privilege, right? So it can get the sensitive information it's looking for. So what it's going to do is basically it's going to, for his lateral movement, right? So at this point, attacker is trying to do a lateral movement to basically a server in my data center to gather information and ready for his final goal. And this is where our new capability, part of the Nova release for advanced threat prevention, can help mitigate this attack, because now we can even detect new and unknown exploit detection, part of the advanced threat prevention. So at this point, I'm going to go back to, so let's see. We're going to go back to our user machine one more time, correct? So what this attacker is trying to do is he's trying to exploit a Bitbucket server, a known vulnerability of Bitbucket server. This is a sophisticated attacker. We already have established it. He knows if he uses the exploit, most likely will be blocked because it's a known exploit, and most of the threat prevention system will have a signature. So this is what I'm going to show you first, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the file with the known exploit of this Bitbucket server to show you how easily that can be detected through a signature-based prevention, correct? And then I'll show how our sophisticated attacker is going to do. So let's run the basic exploit. And now let's go back to our firewall. Here you can see that this particular exploit was detected by a signature created for this particular exploit, as you can see it here, correct? We have created the signature for this exploit, part of the POC when the vulnerability was detected. Simple, correct? Blocked by any threat prevention system. And now let's go back to the user machine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a modified version of this exploit, correct? To just bypass the traditional signature-based threat prevention system. So with this, what I'm going to, let me start the file, correct? So now I started this modified version. Now if we go back to the threat, you can see the original signature has not kicked in. And the reason is because it's a modified version of the same exploit. That's all this attacker has to do to bypass the control. But with the Nova release, we can still detect this because we have analyzed this data while it was going through in real time, and we can detect that this is basically an exploit, unknown exploit, correct? And that's the beauty, because with this release or this detection, we can protect our user from any new and unknown or modified exploit also. But let's not end our demo. Let's continue. Let's see that even that stage failed, right? Let's assume nothing happened. Nothing was able to block. So now the attacker is ready for his final stage, right? Which was looking for all the way in, right? Now is ready to exfiltrate the data out of your network. Most of the C2 frameworks provides a mechanism for them, but a sophisticated attacker at this point might want to pivot to a DNS protocol, correct? Why? Because the sophisticated attacker knows that DNS is a must-to-have traffic in every network, and it has a bidirectional communication, DNS query, DNS response, though most of the businesses have minimal security around it. And that's the reason DNS is becoming a fast rising favorite amongst our adversaries, right? So let me show you how this attacker is going to use DNS to exfiltrate the data out. DNS tunneling attack, where basically attacker can exfiltrate the data out of your network over a legitimate DNS query to some authoritative DNS server under its control. So let's take a look how this DNS query data is going to look like it, correct? So if you look at here, you can see what attacker is doing. He's sending a small amount of data encoded as a subdomain to this over a DNS query, correct? You can see how hard it is to be detected because it's a very small amount of data, and there's always 1,000 DNS queries happening in the network. But now, if we go back and if we look into our traffic log, correct, you can see we were still able to detect this DNS tunneling attack. And the reason is because our DNS protocol, DNS security is analyzing the threats in line and in real time. And because of that, it can sense that we are sending this data to this domain and there's a data attached to it, correct? And just because our DNS security is in line and in real time, we can not only detect DNS tunneling, we can detect dozens of other DNS types attack. For example, a new addition of ultra slow DNS tunneling, where attackers are sending into the multiple authoritative server. A dictionary DAG is another attack we are seeing it, basically where the attackers is stitching together different words, dictionary word to mimic them real DNS, kind of a real domain, in other words, to bypass the command and control detection kind of thing. So there's so many detection can be detected over the DNS. So just to recap, correct? So basically the whole idea of this demo is to show you how the modern day attack lifecycle looks like it, and how we can basically still protect our user using our advanced security services at these different stages of the attack. So one last thing I want to say before I hand it over to my firewall logged out. But one thing I wanted to show it, basically, not only that we have all these advanced capabilities, correct? We have tried to keep the advanced capability configuration as simple as possible. All of these different security services are still using the profile. So majority of security services are profile basis. And basically you can use the same profile, correct? We have added this inline analysis, have part of the same security services and link them into the same policy, and you would still be able to, so for example here, correct, I have created one policy where I have linked all of those different profiles into the same policy, correct? And under the profile, you can see that we have added few options. So for example, if I go under the advanced group holding profile, you can see we have added these inline categorization or local categorization here, correct? But we try to make the changes as minimal as possible so our existing customer can still use our advanced security services and without too much changes in their network. With this, I am done and I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you, everybody.